Have you ever noticed how people name drop? Now, name dropping is essentially the practice of casually mentioning the names of famous people that one knows, or claims to know in order to impress others. W. Keith Campbell, University of Georgia psychology professor, says an individual can look good to others and boost his or her own self-esteem by associating with powerful people. But in truth, name dropping reveals low self-esteem. I'm going to go one step further. I believe name dropping reveals insecurity. And most people usually see through the act. Now, Paul had a group of rivals who had elevated themselves to the Corinthians, and Paul decided that he was going to play their game on their own playing field. 2 Corinthians 11:21 states, "Whatever anyone else dares to boast about, I am speaking as a fool. I also dare to boast about." Now, this brief section is called the fool's speech, as Paul boasts of his credentials in order to counteract the incredible claims of his rivals. Insecure people name drop, and Paul used name dropping as he started with his pedigree. He says, "Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they Abraham's descendants? So am I." But then he says something that changes everything. "Are they servants of Christ? I am more." So far, Paul and his rivals have come from equal backgrounds, but now Paul goes completely in a different direction related to servanthood. Now, insecure people list their accomplishments. D.A. Carlson suggests that Paul could have listed something like this for Paul. Paul could have said, "I've established more churches. I have preached the gospel in more lands and to more ethnic groups. I've traveled more miles. I've won more converts. I've written more books. I've raised more money. I have dominated more councils. I have walked with God more fervently. I've seen more visions. I've commanded the greatest crowds, and I've performed the most spectacular miracles." But Paul did not list those accomplishments. He lists his suffering as a servant. Paul boasts about his weakness. None of his rivals tried that one. Paul's divine accreditation would not be measured in terms of human greatness, but with respect to human weakness. And Paul pictures his life abounding with immeasurable sufferings as he served. He said, "I have worked much harder. I have been in prison more frequently. I have been flogged more severely. I have been exposed to death again and again." He says in verse 24, "5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. Now, 40 lashes minus 1 would occur in the synagogue, and the severe beating would be extremely painful, humiliating. The flogging occurred 5 times. That's never mentioned in Acts. And by the way, 5 times 39 would total 195 stripes had been placed on his back. Imagine the scars. Then he says, 3 times I was beaten with rods. Roman Gentiles used this instrument of cruelty. The victim was stripped and beaten until the officials were satisfied. He goes, "Once I was pelted with stones." And Acts tells that story as he was stoned at Lystra and left apparently dead. 3 times I was shipwrecked, he said. "I spent a night and day in the open sea." Now, this occurred before Acts 27, so actually Paul was shipwrecked at least 4 times. Verse 26, "I've been consistently on the move. I've been in danger from rivers. I've been in danger from bandits. I've been in danger from my fellow Jews. I've been in danger from the Gentiles. I've been in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false brothers." He said, "I have labored and toiled. I've gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst. I've often gone without food, and I've been cold and naked." Now, no one could claim Paul's list of sufferings, not his rivals. Plus, he had experienced pastoral hardship. He says, "Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all the churches." And then in verse 29, he says, "Who is weak? Do I not feel weak? Who is led into sin? Do I not inwardly burn?" He competes with his fools by adding, "If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. The God, the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ, who is to be praised forever, knows that I am not lying. In Damascus, the governor had the city put under guard to arrest me, but I was lowered in a basket from a window in the wall, and I slipped through all of their hands." You see, the greatest people in life are not movie stars. It's not the rich and famous. And instead of measuring people by money, fortune, or fame, or by saying you know those people, stop name dropping. Stop listing your accomplishments. I got news for you. The greatest people in this life are those who serve with scars. Jesus said, the greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Paul was a servant. He had the scars to prove it. Let me illustrate greatness. On May 1st, 1873, at 60, David Livingstone died while trying to find the source of the Nile River. With 4 theatrical words, Dr. Livingstone, I presume, Henry Morton Stanley found him, and he wrote a book about him, and that book became immortal. Stanley stayed with Livingstone for 5 months, and then he went to England, and he told his story to everyone. Livingstone, in the meantime, got lost again in the jungles, in a swamp, literally up to his neck, and within a year and a half, he died in a mud hut, kneeling beside his cot in prayer. The things that Livingstone suffered over the 30 years that spanned his lifetime there in Africa were astonishing. His first aim had been to bring Christianity to Christianity, and he died fighting to the end to get rid of slave trade. His African friends, former slaves he had freed, buried his heart under a tree 70 miles from the shore of a lake, and then they carried his body through the jungle to the coast, and then they sailed to London. It took 11 months and the open seas to get him back to his own people. As the doctor had been away from England for so long, they took his remains and identified that it was truly him by the broken arm that had been crushed by a lion. All of Britain wept. The whole civilized world wept. They gave him a 21-gun salute, and the funeral that he had was a hero's funeral. It said on his tombstone, brought by the faithful hand over land and sea, David Livingstone, missionary, traveler. For 30 years, his life was spent in an unwearied effort to evangelize the native races and to explore the undiscovered secrets and to abolish the slave trade. You want to be great? Name dropping and listing accomplishments does not work. You want to be great? Serve with scars. That works. And by the way, that's hard.